Hello, this is Andy Bennett with Interactive Learning. In this video tutorial, I'm going to walk through all of the contents of the CHiSL curriculum. We will start by referring to a previous video that detailed how to install the CHiSL curriculum. After that, we'll show you where that installation puts all of the files, and then we'll walk through course 1 through 3 folders, the drill and ceremony and service learning folder, instructor resources, and finish off with Mission Possible. I mentioned that there is a previous video that discusses how to install the CHiSL curriculum. You can get to this video by going to the CHiSL training website. The URL is on the screen. You can click on that. It's also tinyurl.com/CHiSL-training. Once there, the number 1 video, CHiSL Intro with Technology. This will walk through all of the steps involved in installing the CHiSL curriculum from your DVD. And then if you do have technology, it will discuss how to move things around a little bit to maximize the use of the software and the hardware. So again, to get to this video, if you've not installed the CHiSL curriculum already, or the NMSCC curriculum, if you have an older version, still the same thing, you can watch this video by clicking on the link on the screen to watch that first. That's the first thing you need to do. Now that your CHiSL or NMSCC curriculum has been installed, let's find where it is located on your computer. From the desktop, double-click on Computer or My Computer. Here we see the C drive. We're going to go ahead and open the C drive. And located towards the top is the now CHiSL curriculum. Keeping in mind, if you do have NMSCC curriculum, it may be located here as well. The folder structure for the CHiSL and NMSCC curriculum are almost identical, so this will work for both versions of the curriculum. For this, we're going to look at the CHiSL curriculum folder. And here we have courses 1 through 3, drill and ceremony, instructor resources, leadership lab, service learning, Mission Possible, tests, and the CHiSL training website that I directed you to just a moment ago. Keep in mind that if you did watch the previous video and you are using the Turning Point software, I had instructed those users to move most of these folders inside another folder called Content, just to make it show up in Turning Point and make it a little bit easier to navigate. But regardless, whether you have it in Content or just left exactly like this from the install, these are the main folders that we're going to be talking about for the rest of this video. Let's first start off by looking at course 1 through 3 folders. All of these are set up in a similar fashion. By default, Windows Explorer will sort by name. If for some reason this gets sorted by a different column, make sure that you click on Name and you have C1, M1, L1 as your first file. With it being sorted correctly, you'll notice that there are 3 file types with this C1, M1, L1 beginning. The IG, which is the instructor guide, the PowerPoint, this says TP8, that's just Turning Point 8, so we've got an instructor guide, we've got a PowerPoint file, and we also have a student learning guide. Both the instructor guide and the student learning guide are PDFs, and these are meant to be the instructor and student's guide to walk through this particular lesson. Let's start off by looking at the instructor guide. Here we see the instructor guide for Course 1, Module 1, Lesson 1. Notice there is a bunch of information on this first page, such as student supplies, student learning materials, linked outcomes, and program outcomes. The image in the middle is generally the first page of the student learning guide, which we'll look at in just a second. Scrolling down to page 2, this is the setup for all of the instructor guides. On the left-hand side, you'll see slide number 1. This correlates to the PowerPoint file that goes along with this particular lesson. There's the slide number. Next to that is the slide itself, a little thumbnail of what the slide looks like as you are presenting that material to your students. To the right of that, we have all of the instructions for the instructors. So being that this is the first slide of the first lesson, there's a bunch of preparation, such as make sure that you get your master training schedule ready. We'll look at that in a little bit, looking at the cadet handbook, cadet challenge, service learning. Basically, this is kind of an overview of all of the different resources that you'll want to have in play or have looked at before you start this first lesson. Let's go to slide number 2. This is a little bit more indicative of what most of the slides will look like. Again, we've got the slide number, we've got the slide thumbnail. To the right is still instructions to the teacher. Find the Getting to Know You activities in the GTKY folder and choose one to use here. We'll show you where that's at in just a little bit. Notice on the second slide that there is text underneath the thumbnail. This text right here correlates to the text for the student learning guide. This is what appears in the student learning guide for this particular slide and the activity that we would want the cadets to be doing at this time in the lesson. Welcome to your first lesson. Look around. What is it that you see? We're going to play Getting to Know You activities provided by your instructor. Okay, let's look at slide 3 here. Towards the beginning of every lesson, you're going to have a student learning guide slide. This has a couple open-ended questions in which to pose to your cadets and to your students to get them thinking about the process. Notice that this is blue text. You'll see this when we open up the PowerPoint, that all of the resources that are tied into the curriculum have a hyperlink in which you can just click on from the slideshow and just bring that up to show the entire class. Makes it a lot easier to access that. To the right, we have the instructions for the teacher. Pass out the student learning guides. Again, we'll talk through some different options as far as whether you want to print off a paper copy for every cadet. That would be the preferred method, but we understand that print budgets being what they are, there may be some ways to get around that, or maybe only printing off certain pages, having the students write in either a composition book or even a digital portfolio that they could keep if they were using different types of technology. Lots of different options when it comes to that. Underneath that, we have the facilitate, introduce students to the student learning guide, tell them about what that is, direct students to work with a partner. There's a lot of partner activities, group activities, allow students to share their findings, draw attention to the lesson structure. Again, just setting up what the lessons are going to look like and the resources that the students have for this curriculum. That's to the right. This is the instructions for the teacher. Underneath the thumbnail, again, is the directions that are located in the student learning guide. So it says, review this student learning guide, module 1, lesson 1, discuss the format of the guide with a partner. So that is what is printed into the student learning guide, and they would be checking that off and writing, if this was a paper copy, their thoughts and everything into that student learning guide. So as we continue down, I won't do all of the slides this way, but just did want to highlight a few of the different types of slides that you're going to see. You're always going to have the slide number, the thumbnail, the instructions for the teacher to the right. Notice this one has a game option, new icons. This is brand new with this turning point version of the curriculum, and then also the student learning guide instructions underneath. So we kind of follow that same format. The way that we think of the instructor guide is basically your lesson plan or your Bible for all of the CHiSL curriculum. Everything is based off of that. It will tell you where to go, how to access the different resources, and when to access them, all from the instructions on the right-hand side for the teacher. So we're going to leave this PDF copy open, and we'll refer back to it here in just a little bit. Let's next jump over to the student learning guide. And we'll see the similarities and how they interrelate between this and the instructor guide. Let's look at this a little bit closer. All of the student learning guides start with this question: why is this lesson important? Okay, are you wondering what the curriculum is about? Gives them a little bit of a background as to what this is for. What are they going to do in this lesson? Again, it's just setting up what it is that they're going to learn about. You will show you've learned this, so basically the application of their knowledge. And your performance will be successful when you, and these are all of the different pieces that you'll be discussing in this first course. We'll get into the master training schedule, talking about the difference between a course and a module and a lesson. These lessons will generally take anywhere between 2 and 4 weeks, depending on how many classroom days you have. We also have, to the right-hand side here, things that you're going to learn along the way, distinguish among the sections. You've got your vocabulary. Some of these are actually vocabulary terms that you can use the student response systems specifically for, that will ask about that. Others are just general vocabulary that will come up throughout the lesson. So here's our first page. Notice they are numbered. So number 1, welcome to the first lesson. If we look back here, we see number 1, welcome to the first lesson. Again, this is the exact text that is going on in the student learning guide that you have access to through that instructor guide. Review the student learning guide right here. Put the little check mark right there. Those first ones are just kind of a check mark and informing the cadets as to what you're expecting of them. Some of them do have actual writing prompts where we want them to write out their answers or their thoughts into the student learning guide. These first two, not so much, but here's an example of a writing prompt. We see on number 5 the question of specific program, a 2 or a 3-year program. What are the names of the 3 courses? Again, it's just integrating them to and introducing the concept of the entire CHiSL curriculum. Okay, so that is your instructor guide and your student learning guide. We'll see when we launch the PowerPoint here that this student learning guide actually comes up from a hyperlink. So if you do not print off a paper copy for every cadet for every lesson, you will have an electronic copy that you can bring up during the lesson, display to the cadets or the students, have them read through it on the screen, and then either write in their own composition book or in a digital portfolio or some other way to kind of track their progress as to their learning going through these different lessons. I'm going to go ahead and close out of the student learning guide because when I open the PowerPoint, I mentioned that the PowerPoint will also redirect to that student learning guide. So let's look at the PowerPoint as well. Keep in mind as this is opening, this is not the technology training. So if people are using Insight 360, which is the legacy software that we started with the CHiSL and the NMSCC curriculum, or the new updated Turning Point software, the how-to on those different softwares is covered in another video. This is purely just to show how to use the curriculum. Here we have the Course 1, Module 1, Lesson 1 PowerPoint. I'll walk you through just the basics of this PowerPoint, since all of the PowerPoints in courses 1 through 3 will follow the same protocol. I'm going to go into the slide sorter view just so you can kind of see the PowerPoint in its entirety. Notice right here it has Part 1. I'd mentioned just a little while ago that each of these lessons is going to take anywhere between 2 to 4 weeks, maybe longer, maybe shorter, just depends on how many classroom days you have. The parts are basically one classroom period, anywhere between 45 minutes to an hour, 30 minutes if you start skipping some things. It's up to you as to how quickly you'd like to go through these PowerPoints. The beginning of each part will have like a title slide. Notice that there's on the lower right hand corner there is a game icon. This is new to the Turning Point 8 version. I'll show you the components of that here, but again, this is not a technical training. Next one is a learning activity. You'll notice that most of the slides will generally have a title to them. So this is a learning activity, there's a student learning guide, this is a focusing question, just so you can kind of tell from the get-go what this slide is going to be covering. So if we look back on our instructor guides, we see here slide 1. Again, we talked about all of the stuff that you would need to do beforehand to get set up and ready for this particular slide in this particular lesson. When we scroll back down to slide number 2, again it says the getting to know you activities. This is what you would be displaying obviously in slideshow mode at that time. You'd be reading through the instructor guide and kind of following along with that. Next, I'm going to go into the slideshow mode and actually show you what it looks like when you put all of this together. Keep in mind there is a separate video that walks you through an entire lesson step by step by step. This is meant to more be just an idea of what the PowerPoints look like and the resources that are tied into them. I am going to use the Turning Point version of this, keep in mind if you have an older version of the software or do not have the software, the PowerPoint is going to act the same. It's just the integrations with the specific technology. So I'm going to go ahead and go into slideshow mode at this point. Here is our title slide. We'd mentioned the game here. I'm just going to show you kind of what this looks like. When you click on this, it actually jumps out to a team assignment slide for those that have the Turning Point clickers, the QT2 clickers, or using with the mobile devices. It jumps over to the team assignment slide. I'm doing simulated polling so you can kind of see what this looks like. Those are the different team assignments there, 5 on Alpha, Bravo, 12 on Charlie, 8 on Delta. The system is smart enough that it takes all of the scores and divides it by the number of participants on that team. To click back to the previous slide, you just click once. Now we're back to the beginning of the presentation, and now we're going to go to this learning activity. And again, if we are thinking about what we are doing as the instructor, you would be looking at your instructor guide. This is the getting to know you activities. You would have had that already set up and ready to go. We'll show you that in the instructor resources portion of the training. And again, the thinking is that this is the very first time that they see any type of classroom instruction for this program. So we're wanting them to just get accustomed to the room and what's going on in the program itself. Next, we have the student learning guide. We talked about this before. I had mentioned that all of the resources incorporated with that lesson will display as a link. So all I have to do is click on the link, and that brings up that student learning guide that we just looked at just a little while ago. Again, thinking of this, if you're not wanting to print off all of the student learning guides for all of your students, you can just click on that link, bring it up, read through it as a class, and then either minimize it or close it, and then you're right back into the PowerPoint. Try to make this as simple as possible to bounce around to the different resources. One other thing that I wanted to mention, if you are using the clickers, in the upper right hand corner of this slide and many others, anytime that we thought it might be useful for you to randomly select one of your students, you can click on one of these numbers. So say I had 32 students in my class. I click on the 32 and it gives me a random number down on the bottom box here of 1 through 32. This one was 29. That would then correlate to their clicker number. All right, student 29, that's Susie. Why do you think this lesson is important? Susie answers the question. We click on it again. 17 is Billy. What do you think you're going to learn today, Billy? See how that works? It just kind of engages everybody in the discussion. So that's the student learning guide slide. Going to the next one. This is our first focusing question. The CHiSL curriculum is, again, they may not know what it is. The purpose of a question like this right at the beginning is to tease out maybe some different misconceptions as to what they think they're doing in this program. So the correct answer is actually both B and C. Because I'm using Turning Point at this point, all I have to do is click one time. It closes the polling. It shows how the students answered on the right hand side, and a second click will show you the correct answer on the left hand slide. Keep in mind those that still have the Insight system, the older system, we left those Q tags in there. Again, if you've never used Insight before, you don't even know what we're talking about there, that will tell the system where to go right here. Again, we'll cover this more in the technical training here, but did want to just mention and show you kind of the cool features of this newer version when it comes to the clicker activities and games. Here's a leaderboard. We see that student number 11, 16, this would actually have their names if we had names in there. That's the leaderboard. All of the questions with the correct answer are worth 10 points. We click again to go back. This one is a team leaderboard. So we see Bravo is in the lead, followed by Delta and Alpha. And there's just lots of really cool, engaging ways to keep your cadets paying attention to the curriculum and trying to answer as best they can. Here's a fastest responder. It goes down to the thousandth of a second, which is kind of a cool feature. And the last one is just kind of a team race right there that you can always check back on. Anytime there is a correct answer, you'll have these icons in the lower right that you can use. Okay, so that is an example of one of the focusing questions. When we go to the next question, you'll see this is a learning activity. So participate in a classroom CHiSL curriculum scavenger hunt. Let's actually go back to our instructor guide and looking here. So we've already done slide 4. So here it is right here. Prepare an object to serve as this entire leadership program and CHiSL curriculum. So this would take some quite a bit of setup beforehand, talking about a tree trunk, the 6 branches, the different opportunities and different portions of the CHiSL curriculum. Again, this is a very customizable program. So if you are maybe not doing as much on the military side, you could maybe do less on the recognitions or whatever the case may be. So you would have read through this beforehand and decided whether you want to show this slide and go through this activity or not. We also took painstaking effort to make sure that we don't have too much information presented at a time on the slide. So you notice that I'm clicking to go to my next section here. So it's basically chunked as the different activities unveil. So first we participated in the classroom scavenger hunt. The next click, create an object out of the word clues, and then discuss each word presented. It's kind of chunked out as that learning activity unfolds. Here's an example of a group activity talking about the 4-phase lesson plan that you can discuss with your cadets. Again, much more information in the instructor guide that you can actually discuss this and facilitate the groups, talk about the different phases right there. Again, everything points back to the instructor guide as to what it is that you're wanting to do, and the instruction that you're going to want to deliver is, we give you the thumbnail sketch there and you put that into your own words to deliver to your classroom. Another group activity. So you basically get the idea of how this works. We're using that student learning guide if it's a printed copy for them to go through. You've got your instructor guide that I would highly recommend, even if you don't print off the student learning guides, I would highly recommend that you do print off your instructor guide so you can have that in front of you. You can take notes, and then from year to year that lesson gets better and better. So you just click through these different things and refer back to those. And again, the PowerPoint is really just the starting off point into these different activities, into these different conversations you have after clicker activities, after group activities, think, pair, share, lots of great stuff that you'll find as you go through and plan out your lessons through that instructor guide. So rather than going through the entire PowerPoint, that gives you kind of a general sense as to what's going on in all of the PowerPoints. Now this section of the training is called the course 1 through 3 folders, right? So far all we've looked at is course 1. The design of the CHiSL curriculum was for a 3-year program, usually middle school, but not always. So course 1 would basically be your first year in the program. If we go back out to the root folder here, course 2 would then be your second year, and course 3 would be your third year. In that very first lesson, it actually talks about the different aspects right here. 3 years of fun. So the course 1 is called Personal Success and Leadership. Again, it starts internally. What can you do to be a better person, a better citizen, a better student? Course 2 then moves from internally to now looking at your local community. How can you be a better student in the community, in your school? And then the course 3 is leadership in a diverse world. Looks at the global community and how they can be a good citizen for the global community. Has some amazing tie-ins to very current activities and current events through the global map. A lot of great things. And as you get into that, you can pick and choose and pull those in even in previous years if you'd like to do some current activities. That course 3 is a great way to do that. Drill and ceremony obviously is just that. If you want to have a drill team and to do drill activities, then there's a great thing. We'll look at that here in the next section. And then service and learning obviously is the last section of the CHiSL curriculum, which we'll look at next. One more thing before we jump over to drill and ceremony and service is if we look back at any of these, whether it's course 1, 2, or 3, after you get through all of the different lessons, so right here we have C3, M1, L1, and then L2, and then module 2, lesson 3, right? After you get through all of these, you'll notice at the very bottom of these, we do have different PDFs that are called R, so that's a resource. So here's a resource that is tied into course 3, module 1, lesson 2, and it's in the same folder because there is an actual link in this PowerPoint that jumps out to this particular PDF, as is this one, as is that one. So there's a bunch of different links that hyperlink all of these different resources that when it comes up in a lesson, it's just there and it's very easy for you to access them. That wraps up the course 1 through 3 folders. Next, we're going to look at the drill and ceremony and service learning folders in the CHiSL curriculum. As we open up the drill and ceremony folder, we see that we have 4 different PowerPoints. Notice these PowerPoints do not have instructor guides or student learning guides. The 4 different PowerPoints cover concepts such as individual drill, squad drill, platoon drill, and conducting in-ranks inspection. The verbiage for all of the instructions inside these PowerPoints come directly from the drill manuals. So we see here the drill and ceremony 1 individual drill PowerPoint. Again, we did incorporate the gaming functions. There's not a lot of clicker questions here, but you can do that if you would like to. They do have opening questions, which just give the cadets an opportunity to let you know how confident they are in this one. This is just a focusing question of how many mistakes do you see. When you do this in slideshow mode, it actually starts. Let me show you what this looks like. So in slideshow mode, we see how many mistakes can you identify. Those are the 5 options. And again, this is what it would look like with the technology, but even without the technology here, the first click would actually give you a next animation. With the technology, you'll see the distribution here. Second click shows you the correct answer. The third click, or actually takes you to the next slide, says, can you find them? So either with a Mobi, which is another bit of the technology, or just having the cadets verbally saying, this is what I see that's wrong with the position of attention. Once they have talked through that and you've given them the opportunity to highlight the problems with this, we click one more time and it actually demonstrates the smirk on the face, the gig line, thumb, and the feet are not at a 45-degree angle. So little questions like that throughout the PowerPoint that will engage the cadets a little bit more. Then we've got the different objectives, the commands, talks about the preparatory command, the execution command, and then it walks directly through how to instruct your cadets on how to learn these different drill movements. I will say that I was not in the military, so I took the existing PowerPoints that did not have any images and were very, very text heavy, and I tried to incorporate images and chunking of the different material to make this a little bit easier to understand from a teacher's perspective. You'll see all of these lines right here. It doesn't make a lot of sense in the editing mode, but once you go into slideshow mode, there we go, 45-degree angle, it kind of points that out. Right, so each of these animations come in and it highlights different aspects of the position of attention. One other aspect of our drill and ceremony PowerPoints that we're especially proud of is the amazing video tutorials. These were all provided to us by a company called Drill Dynamics. All of their information is at the tail end of this PowerPoint, just so if you would like more information or even drill camps, you can actually reach out directly to them. But the videos are top-notch, absolutely incredible. Just kind of scroll through one of them here. We see right here it's video. It is kind of talking through each individual movement here, and you'll hear from professional drill instructors exactly how to do the position of attention with arms and without arms. Continues on here. There's parade rest. Notice right here, and actually it mentions it on the second slide right here, this is a hidden slide. It mentions right here that you can hide slides by right-clicking and select hide slides. The reason we bring this up right at the beginning is that depending on how you would like to drill, whether you're an Air Force unit or an Army unit or Marines and Navy, you can actually hide the videos that do not apply to your cadets. So we see right here on slides 17, 18, and 19, we have the different styles of parade rest depending on which service we're talking about. So if you have an Army unit, you just right-click and hide that slide. You could delete it, but if we hide that slide, then if someone after us comes in and is running an Air Force unit, they can right-click and unhide that slide. So that is the purpose of having all of these videos embedded in the same PowerPoint. I will say that that does make the PowerPoints very, very large. So just to be aware that these are very, very large PowerPoints. The entire curriculum is about 4.5 gigs. I think drill and ceremony accounts for about 1 gig of that, just because of these videos that are in the PowerPoints, for what it's worth. And then towards the end, we've got some check on learning questions, some reinforcement questions. We have some image identification questions, which make it a little bit more interesting as well. And it just continues along in this fashion. So that is the first one. We could look at the second one. Everything kind of follows the same format, where it has a focusing question at the beginning. There's videos throughout, and all of the wording comes directly from the drill manuals. So that is our drill and ceremony component of the CHiSL curriculum. The rest of the PowerPoints follow that same protocol. Let's move on to the service learning. So leadership lab, service learning. This folder does follow the same protocol and the same naming conventions as the course 1 through 3 folders do, which means that it has an instructor guide, a student learning guide, and a PowerPoint. Again, these resources, the ones that start with R, are just resources that are linked into the PowerPoint. The instructor guide's formatted a little bit differently than the ones in course through 3, but it is still basically the teacher instruction manual for what they need to cover, some deeper information as to how to instruct their cadets on this given material. This one has a table of contents. What is service learning? So again, this is all for the instructor's knowledge as they're preparing for a service learning project. Prepare a plan, act, reflect. Why are lessons in service learning so important? Talks about what the students will do. Has this great acronym of IGNITE: identify needs, gather supplies, network, inform, teamwork, and encourage. There's more information on the IGNITE process, and just some different examples of what service learning projects would look like. The time on each of those, the materials that you're going to need, random acts of kindness. Again, you can kind of read through this as you get into your service learning project. There's a different example. So that's the instructor guide. Now let's look at the student learning guide. The student learning guides, unlike the instructor guide, are set up pretty much identically to the ones in course 1 through 3. So number 1 is participate in an activity and then reflect below. There is a lot more of fill in the blank or like text short answer responses, whereas the other ones are sometimes just a check mark. So you may want to actually print one of these off per cadet or per squad to have them reflect on their process as they go through this service learning project. What was important? How will you use the knowledge you gathered there? Brainstorm to generate ideas. Divide into the teams and discuss the roles. We'll look at that when we get into the actual PowerPoint that talks about the different roles that are identified in this process. Next, let's look at the PowerPoint. Here we see the learning activity, focusing question. There's the different roles that we just saw in the student learning guide. An example of community needs in the group. Here's your community needs assessment. Again, everything that is blue and underlined is a hyperlink that once you're in slideshow mode, you just click on. It brings up that resource, so you could talk through this document on the screen and then hand that out, and they could fill that out as squads or as individual cadets. This is also in their student learning guide. So basically follows the same protocol as we saw in courses 1 through 3. You've got the different parts, learning activities, focusing questions. The resources are then linked back into that, different team activities. All of that looks basically the same, and you can dig into the instructor guide to get more information as to how to engage in this service learning project. In a subsequent video, we will actually dig into the service learning a little bit deeper, but again, this is just an overview of what is available in the CHiSL curriculum. So at this point, we're going to change gears and go to our 5th subject, which is the Instructor Resources folder. You will find a wealth of information in the Instructor Resources folder. Let's walk through each of these and talk through all of the resources you have available to you in the CHiSL Curriculum's Instructor Resources folder. We'll just start with the first folder alphabetically, which is the clicker game. You saw that a little while ago. Inside the Turning Point version of the CHiSL curriculum, there are competitions, and this document just walks through all of the different aspects of the competition and how to access each of those. So if you want to access the cool competitions that are available inside of Turning Point, this clicker game folder is the place to go for that. Next down we have ExamView test summaries. We'll see this more when we look at our Mission Possible folder. Basically, for all of the ExamView tests within Mission Possible, there are standards-based reports for all of those. There are 10 questions for language, 8 for writing in 7th grade, and 8 for writing, and 7 for writing in the 8th grade. All multiple choice. Once we scroll down here, this is where it gets into some really great information. So here's the learning objective, how many questions there are in each of those. Recognize variations from standard English, 10 questions on that. So as you are talking to your administrators and core classroom teachers, this is going to be some great material for you to highlight of how the Mission Possible curriculum can help to bolster all of that core content knowledge. So that's the ExamView test summaries. Next we have the flash files. Most of these are directly embedded within the PowerPoints, with many of those being graphic organizers. Here's a brainstorming web. So we see an example of that. Type the text into the ovals. These are really cool because they are actually interactive. So I can actually type in different categories here. So there's the core concept. And these are, category 1, category 2, so on and so forth. You can actually see an example of this. Fish, different fish parts, scales, fins, types, and then there's the practice exercise, which is where it starts, and then a definition, which will actually give you a verbal definition as well as a video.
Brainstorming webs are a type of graphic organizer that shows how ideas and questions are linked. Brainstorming is creative thinking by a group of people.
And all of these different graphic organizers have that same format where it has a practical exercise, the definition, and an example of those. There are a couple other flash file objects in here. This What's My Rank is a fun activity you can do with or without clickers. So we say we want to do, we'll just do all of them. How about? We proceed, we'll do level 1, all ranks. We could do officers or enlisted, titles or abbreviations. Sure, we'll do all ranks. With the titles, we proceed into that. You could do, less questions, more questions. We'll say proceed from there. And then once you start the game, it gives you the rank on the left-hand side and then some multiple choice options off to the side here. So that's a lieutenant general. Gives you a little green check mark if you get it correct. You notice that the timer is ticking down over here. That's obviously in the Navy. That is a, oh man, what am I say? Oh, that was incorrect. Okay, there's your Army. So that's a lieutenant colonel. So on and so forth. So that's kind of a fun game. Again, you can do this with clickers. Say this is A, B, C, D. Or you could just do it as a class and have them shout out answers or have somebody control the mouse there. So that's a fun one. And some different ones down there. So that's the flash file folder. Next down is your Friday game. This is going to be talked about in the instructor guide. And what is the Friday game? Well, it is an awesome Word document that has some great ideas of how to kind of wrap up your week with some fun, engaging activities here. So basically, the procedure is that you present this thought-provoking question. The students write their answers down anonymously. You collect those in a hat, read the responses, and then the students get the opportunity to guess whether they got the person right or not. And it walks you through all the different things. Here's some of the different questions. What is your idea of a perfect day? If you could be any animal, what would that be? Describe a simple pleasure in your life. There's up to 100 different engaging questions included in the Friday game. That's kind of a fun one. Next down, GTKY. We actually already saw that in our first lesson. GTKY stands for Getting to Know You Activities. This will be great towards the beginning of any school year. There are 12 different getting to know you activities within this folder. So this M&M Icebreakers is one that I've used in the past. So whether it's M&Ms or Skittles, you basically hand them out or have them grab 4 to 6, and then for every red candy, they have to share with the group what their favorite hobby is. Green candy is a favorite food, so on and so forth. So it takes about 10 minutes. It's just a good, fun way to get your students to know each other better and to break the ice a little bit. So that's the getting to know you activities. That is just one of the 12 different options that you have right there. Lots of different ones you can look through. Next is the IG and SLG Word versions. Again, IG is Instructor Guide, SLG is Student Learning Guide. What we did is we included these as Word documents. If you need to go into any of these documents and make some changes, you could actually go into this Instructor Guide, and it's the exact document that we used to save as a PDF. But if you need to go in here and say, you know, we're not going to do this portion, we just want to take that out. So whatever the case may be, you go in here and edit this. This is your editable version, and then you can save that either back as a PDF or print it off, however you need to do it. But we wanted to give you the ability to access all of the instructor guides and student learning guides from all 3 courses and have editing rights to all of those. So that's what the IG and SLG Word versions folder is at. Insight 360 Resources. This is again the legacy version of the software. This is the first version of interactive software that came out with NMSCC initially, and then CHiSL curriculum was the Insight 360 clickers and Mobi system. If you have that system, this folder will give you a lot of great resources for that. If you need additional support on that, feel free to reach out to me and I can give you some more specific training on Insight 360 systems. Next down is your Leadership Challenge. This is another single document, somewhat like the Friday game. This one's called the Human Knot Activity. So it's kind of another fun, interactive game that you can get your cadets to be doing at a specific time, this one focusing on leadership. Next down is OMOG. If you don't know what that means, that is 1 minute of gym. Throughout the PowerPoint, I might not have gotten to that specific section in the PowerPoint, but what you're going to find in all of the different sections of the lessons is you're going to have a 1 minute of gym or a 1 minute of Zen every lesson or every section. And let me just show you a couple of the 1 minute of gym. These are great small little physical activities that you can do right in the comfort of your classroom. They're not going to require a lot of equipment. This one does require a matter towel, but I think even without that you could probably do some of these. This one's very, very straightforward. Find a long staircase in your school and have students run up and down. That's pretty easy. I'm guessing the mat and the towel is to dry them off afterwards, right? What's a Superman? Again, mat or towel. Tell students to lay face down on the mat or towel with legs stretched out. It's kind of like a planking activity where they're engaging their core. Lots of different things that you can do in the span of a minute or two within a classroom. Some of them you may need to out to a field or be running some stairs, but most of them are right within the classroom that allows you to just get them up out of their seats, get their bodies moving a little bit, break up the classroom a little bit, and it's a great way to incorporate some physical activity into your classroom. So that's the 1 minute of gym. Notice, and I didn't give you a count, there are 45 different activities right here. 45 different ones. I'm sure you could find 100 more online. We just wanted to give you a good example of some small things. There is also a link in the PowerPoints that takes you out to a website that gives you some video examples of students doing some 1 minute of gym activities. 1 minute of Zen, OMOZ, is the next folder down. Similar to the 1 minute of gym, this is a small increment of time that within the lesson you would take time to do either some yoga things or some deep breathing or some focusing activities, again to kind of break up the flow of the lesson to keep everybody engaged, to allow them some time to reflect on what's going on. and a number of different activities there in this 1 minute of Zen folder. Next is the personal responsibility map. This has changed in recent versions. It used to be a paper copy. Now this is all online, and the directions for how to administer and how to get your personal responsibility map are all within the documents and the resources within the personal responsibility map folder. It says right here on this beginning of this document, it's a very important aspect of the CHiSL curriculum. We recommend that the students do this at the beginning of each of the 3 years. This is how to do that. You reach out to Chris Volkman with this specific information. Donna Rice, Dr. Donna Rice, is the person to get in contact with. Obviously, use these resources that you have at your fingertips first, but if there are additional questions that you maybe need help with, reach out to Dr. Donna Rice at the information on the screen here, and she can help you through getting your cadets using and accessing the amazing personal responsibility map. Next in our list is the physical fitness folder. This is just a small gathering of some great resources that will allow you to do different things like the cadet challenge. So here are some different things that are involved in the cadet challenge: curl-ups, partial curl-ups, pull-ups, flexed arm hang, and then there's your cadet score sheet. So the idea is that you would do this throughout the year and be able to track their progress and see how they're doing on all of that. So that's the cadet challenge criteria. Let me show you another one. I mentioned that in the 1 minute of gym, it talks about jammin minutes, Jammin minute. This document right here gives you that same website right there that you can access through the PowerPoint, but it gives you an idea of some fun, energetic routines that you can do all within your classroom to get students up out of their classroom, do some quick exercises, and get them active. So I'm not going to go through all of the different documents in these folders, but again, that's just where to go to find some of the different resources you have. So there are 4 documents in the physical fitness folder. Standards. This is a great resource, especially for your administrators that are asking what specific standards are you helping your cadets to meet. So we'll look at the Course 1 standards here. So inside of Course 1, Module 1, Lesson 1, which is what we looked at just a little while ago, you have your linked core abilities, linked external standards. There are specific national standards right there: language arts standards, social studies standards. I think that's a reading or language arts standards, the different criteria. So all of that kind of is broken out for you per lesson. So there's Module 2, Lesson 1. What course standards and abilities are they going to get from each of those? So rather than having to open up all of those different PowerPoints or those different instructor guides, they're all in one spot in this standards folder of the instructor resources. Look at the curriculum map. It'd be another resource that might be useful for you as you're talking to administrators and your school board about the impact and the standards-driven curriculum that you have. That's going to matter to them. So here we have applying critical thinking skills, building learning skills. You see that all 3 courses, 1, 2, and 3, meet all of these core abilities there. Here we have some program outcomes. Again, they meet all of those as well. And then when we get into specific standards, here's your language standards. We see the specific courses that hit on those. So demonstrating command of conventions for standard English grammar, all of them hit that, but usage for writing or speaking, that is focused more on Course 3. I'm sorry, the standards matrix is another great tool to present to your administrators and show the value of the program. And finally, the last folder inside of the instructor resources folder is the Turning Point resources. Again, there's 2 different types of technology that the CHiSL or NMSCC curriculum can run on, either Insight 360 or Turning Technologies if you're using clickers. The Turning Point resource obviously focuses on the newer version using the QT2 clickers or mobile devices. There are a bunch of additional resources available. If I go up a couple levels, at this CHiSL training website. This is something that this is where you're looking and watching this video as we get additional training videos on the specific types of technology and just little tips and tricks we have for you as the instructor. That is where you're going to find those, is at this CHiSL training website. There's not a lot in there right now, but this is a constantly growing library that all of the instructors using this curriculum will have access to. The documents and links that are in the Turning Point Resources folder are generic resources from Turning Technologies Training Department. All great things. Like I said, the CHiSL training website will have things that are specific to CHiSL instructors, but this is also a great start. We see right here, there's the quick start guide for those that are using the QT2 clicker. Here's what all the buttons do, different examples of the screen. That's one example. Some of these are actually websites. So here's the Turning Point user guides. So you can pop out there, and this will obviously constantly change as new versions of Turning Point come out. You'll be able to go out here and download and view and look at the different resources available from Turning Technologies. Next up, the CHiSL course guide is a great tool because what it does is it breaks down, again, the CML course module lesson, the title of each of those, what is it that's covered in C1, M1, L1. So rather than having to go out and dig through all of the different files and folders, you can go right here and just read a short thumbnail sketch of what's covered in each of these lessons. There's Module 1, and you see Lesson 1, Lesson 2, what's covered in each of those. Module 2, who are you as a leader? Looking at leadership, the attributes of leaders, all of that is broken down in this great CHiSL course guide. Highly recommended that you print this off, have this next to your instructor guide so you can kind of flip through and see, do I need to pull some great resources from maybe another module, another lesson to incorporate into my lesson today. Curriculum packages, if you're ever needing to increase the number of curriculums that you have right there, you can see all of the information right there. This is constantly changing. You see right here that this is talking about Insight 360. The newer version does have Turning Point. So use this as a guide, but do know that the technology and the pricing and the different things may change on these curriculum packages depending on what we're offering at that time. All right, we're almost there, guys. CHiSL Desk Reference. This is an amazing, amazing resource. Let's take a look at this one. For many instructors that get into being a CHiSL instructor or a JLC or JCC, lots of different names for these programs, many of them don't have a background in education. The thinking behind this desk reference guide is that all of the education speak, some of the different strategies and different theories around education are all embedded in this one single document. So we see what CHiSL overview, module, and lesson relationship, instructor guides versus student learning guides. A lot of that is what I've covered in the previous videos here, but you'll see a deep dive here, competency linked program outcomes. Check out part 2 though. This is the highlights of what you would get in a basic education course, talking about multiple intelligences, Bloom's taxonomy, metacognition, Socratic questioning, all of these things that you hear about or you hear your teacher's friends talking about. This gives you the highlight of all of those. I could talk for hours about all of the great information that is included in part 2, but just wanted to highlight where that's at so you know where to get it. Okay. I should say part 3, but basically the next part is your graphic organizers. You saw where those were at in the flash activities. This breaks down where you would use those and how those are valuable to your cadets. So jumping down to part 2, we see the climate in the classroom, why that matters, fact of a positive attitude, tone of voice, humor in the classroom, enthusiasm. There's just so much great material here. Think of this like an education book, guys. I would recommend just reading through that and getting in the correct headspace as you go into a school year. That reminds me, one of the resources that is not included in your digital curriculum that has been sent out with all of the newer systems is the Teach Like a Champion book. That's another amazing, amazing teaching resource. So as you are trying to hone your craft and become a better teacher, better instructor, that Teach Like a Champion is an amazing resource because it has proven methods as to what works in schools, lots of different demographics, ethnicities. They've done all the research and compiled that into one book of here is what's working in schools. And what I love about it best is it has a video. So there's a DVD in there that you can plop in and say, I can read about this different way to do this, but I would love to see a teacher actually do that. It does that for you. It's incredible. Check that out as well. So I could spend a lot of time on this CHiSL desk reference, but like I said, I would recommend just reading this from top to bottom just to get in the right headspace to give you some new tools for the toolbox of your teaching experience. That brings us to our last few files in our instructor resources folder. 4 of the last 5 are Excel documents, and the MTS stands for Master Training Schedule. I'd mentioned that right at the top of the video. The Master Training Schedule is an Excel document that you, as the instructor for your program, get to plan out your entire year as to when you're doing classroom lessons, when you're doing PT days, when you're doing service learning, if you're doing a leadership lab. All of that is broken down in this Excel document. So right here we have semester 1. All of this is right here is the weeks. So on week 1, we're talking about an introduction to the program. We understand as educators that the first week is really meant to set up the procedures, set up the policies, all of that. You're going to have students coming in and out. We had given you 2 weeks to do that. We'll have a new cadet handbook that will be coming out here really soon that you can also go over in those first 2 weeks. So we had said of the first 2 weeks, you're going to spend 5 days, so basically those entire first 2 weeks, just introducing your cadets to the program. That's what we had said. So on week 3, you're going to get into the actual curriculum, which is Course 1, Module 1, Lesson 1. We see that there are 4 parts. So here we've got 2 on week 3 and 2 on week 4. Like I said, these lessons may take 2 weeks or 3 weeks, or the different modules. So right here we've got 2 in week 3, and if we scroll down, still in week 3, which is this column G, we see leadership application. So the way we had set it up, completely customizable to what it is that you want for your program, we had said in week 3 you would do 1 day of drill and ceremony, color guard, orienteering, however you want to do that. 1 day there. If you want to change that, you just change the number, okay? 1 day of PT, jam and minute, your cadet challenge, maybe you're doing some initial testing right at the beginning of the year. 1 day a week on drill and ceremony, 1 day of PT, and 1 day of doing either service learning or testing and inspections. We see these switching off, alternating weeks right there. So between 2 days of classroom, 1 day of drill and ceremony, 1 day of PT, and 1 day alternating between service learning and inspections, that basically gives you your 5 days per week. If that is not how you want to run it, you may want to say, I want to do 3 days a week in the classroom, and maybe we alternate here. So maybe I'm going to do 1 day there, and the next week I'm going to do PT. Okay, so then you're still at your 3 days there, 4, 5, you've got 5 days total, and I needed to add a third day here. So maybe it's 3 here and 2 there and 1 here. As you're adding this up, obviously you need to make sure that you're accounting for the fact that there are 4 parts here, so you would do 3 there, 1 there, and then the other 2 would come from this lesson there. And that gets you back to your 5 days per week. So all of this is completely customizable. Some schools are meeting as after school programs. Some schools are only doing this as a part-time thing where they're only meeting 3 or 4 times a week. All of this is built to be flexible enough to fit whatever it is that you want for your program. The numbers that we have in here from the get-go are just a good starting off point. So what you would want to do with, if you have a co-instructor or maybe your administrator, is sit down and kind of plan out one whole semester or maybe even the entire year. If you scroll to the right here, you actually see that this has semester 2 there as well, and you're just a little bit further down. Now you're into course 1, module 1, lesson 2. So all of that is played out over an entire year. And you plan that out at the beginning of the year, and then you can obviously adjust and move things around as you go through your year. That's course 1. Here's course 2, same exact concept. For all of these master training schedules, we did format it to where when you want to print it off, it will fit on a single page. So there's semester 1, there's semester 2. All of it will fit onto one page right there, and you can do that before or after you fill in the numbers right here. So that is what the master training schedule looks like. Anybody that has done JRTC, this will be very familiar. This is how they handle their scheduling as well. I mentioned an after-school program. If that applies to your situation, you can use this as a model and then just adjust the numbers accordingly. The last file in your instructor resources folder is something that we already saw in our PowerPoints. It's just that random number tool flash object. Just a little bit bigger, and you could have this up if you'd want to. All you have to do is just click on the numbers to get that upper range. So this is 1 through 40. This is 1 through 32, 1 through 15. Just gives you a random number between 1 and that upper number, just as a way to keep them engaged. So I realize this was a longer section, but this instructor resources folder of CHiSL is a critically important piece of the puzzle to understand as you get into this curriculum and fully understand what you have at your fingertips and where to find stuff when you are instructing on the curriculum. So hope this section has been useful. The final section of this curriculum walkthrough is the Mission Possible folder. Mission Possible is a test prep program that is included for everyone that purchases the technology. If you did not purchase the technology and after seeing this you would like to purchase that just outright, you can do that even without buying the clickers and the Turning Point software. Before I open the PowerPoints, let me just give you a background as to what Mission Possible's goal is. The content for all of these PowerPoints come directly from an organization called College Options Foundation, and their primary mission is to help students become college ready. So to that end, they have many ACT and SAT prep guides and different things along those lines to help students prepare for getting into college. We partnered with them and were able to take that great ACT and SAT prep material and convert that and use that same language and same instruction and put those into manageable chunks of PowerPoints. So if we look at our English section, we see that we've got subject-verb agreement, pronoun antecedent agreement, parallel structure. These core curriculum concepts are covered both in middle school and high school and are just paramount to just the basic understanding of English, math, and science. So let's look at one of the PowerPoints here. Here we have our first English PowerPoint, subject-verb agreement. Notice they all start with a lesson objective, and they go right into the instruction of that content. We also include opening questions. This is a readiness to learn. How ready are you to learn today? These are fun focusing questions that help get the students engaged, leaning into the content, kind of thinking about this. This is a fun one. Great lawyers is coming. Will you be one of them? Is that grammatically correct? Well, it doesn't sound like it is, but if that's the name of an organization, albeit a very poor choice of names, it would be correct. So it's one of those things that it just depends on how you use it. Again, the purpose of this is to get them leaning into the content, thinking about that. One of the unique and amazing things about this Mission Possible curriculum is the student videos. So rather than hearing it from an adult of what subject-verb agreement means, they hear it from students their age. So I'll watch just a little bit of this one.
And I'm here to tell you that grammar are not a difficult subject. That's right. If you notice an error in that statement, then you correctly identified a mistake in subject-verb agreement, which is important in making your sentences sound natural and correct.
So you see right here that they do have information and text popping up in the sections of the screen right here. So you see the student on the lower right, and then they've got different examples and a summary of all of those. When you get into the math and the science sections, there's even more graphs and media that's displayed in. It's similar to Khan Academy, but it's not really spelled out. It's just the text popping up with the students explaining it in their own words. Then we get into another section of content here, subject-verb agreement. All of this is chunked, so it's not all this information at once. It's one bullet at a time, allows you to talk about it, allows them to process it a little bit. This one has some different animations here where it underlines singular subject. There's your prepositional phrase and your singular verb. All of this is chunked out, and then at the end you've got some reinforcement questions. Keep in mind that this looks a little busy at this time, but if you do this in slideshow mode, all of those bullet points will pop in and it further explains what's going on. So let's take a quick look at this in slideshow mode. Okay, what if any changes are needed to be made to the sentence? There we go, looking through the sentence. There is our distribution. Again, for both different types of technology, both Turning Point and Insight 360, both of these will work. There's your correct answer. If you don't have either of those technologies, you could just pop this up and discuss that a little bit, and then once you click to the next one, it will show the correct answer. And then going to the next slide, it further explains that the subject help is singular, everything else needs to be singular as well, and it breaks down that choices B and D are incorrect because of this. So just a quick example of what some of the questions look like. So that's an example of our reading content. Let's take a look at some of our math content. Similar setup here. You've got your lesson objectives, opening questions, some content. There's your student video, some more content there. There's a second student video, and then some reinforcement questions towards the end. This one does have, which I wanted to just point out, the option to test further on this same content in the areas of decimals, integers, negative and positive numbers. You can access these through the PDFs on the screen. So that actually brings up the PDF test. So you can continue to test on this content. You can do that via paper and pencil. So here's a couple of the different options that we have available. You can display the questions on PowerPoint or anywhere polling if you're using the Turning Point software. You can actually do this as a self-paced test where you give the students a paper copy and then they answer with Turning Point. So lots of different options right there. There's a video to show you how to poll in the different options right there. So even if you're not using the technology, again, you can print off these tests and then grade them by hand, but no one wants to grade by hand, so might as well use the technology to simplify that a little bit. Back to the Mission Possible folder, you've seen English, math, science is set up in the same manner. If we look in the tests, we've got here's our science test right here. Those same PDFs that we were seeing linked into the PowerPoint are right here. The one that has the little blue icon is actually a question list, so you can actually engage this directly with Turning Point on the Turning Point option as well. Back to our instructor resources. You remember me mentioning that there is an ExamView test summary. So for that decimals test that I just brought up, there's the number of questions. We've scrolled down. We can actually see the learning objectives for each of those, how many questions are on each of those, the different national standards associated with that. So a lot of great information and proof that you're working to bolster your students' core academic knowledge as well. So that is an overview of Mission Possible. This concludes our curriculum walkthrough of the CHiSL curriculum. We thank you again for your purchase of the curriculum and or technology, and we look forward to working with you in the future. If there's anything that I or the team can do to help maximize your use and your benefit of the CHiSL curriculum, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at the information on the screen. Thank you again and have a fantastic day.